Shake it up. Shaking up the garbage we feed on. Shaking up our wondrous being. Let's begin to reform. Even if just for a moment, to share the cloying and the suffocating skin. Let's shake it up right now. Let's shake it up right now. Let's shake it up right now. Shake it up. Languishing in thoughts, lucidity doesn't benefit the greater cause. Driving blind and clawing wildly, wreaking havoc, banging heads against the wall. Let's shake it up right now. Let's shake it up right now. Let's shake it up right now. Hello there, welcome to the Creative Shake-Up podcast. And we do have a guest today. Before we meet with Tracey LC Wilson for an incredible discussion, I already know that's going to be the case. I want to explain, not over-explain, not justify, but give a little bit behind the scenes of how I do what I do. There are different ways of doing the same thing for all of us. I will be sharing this message again in the future because I feel it's important at this time. Currently, at time of recording, 910 subscribers and rising. Amazing. We're back on track in terms of more interviews, more inspiration, more individuals already lined up. People from different backgrounds, different experiences in life, sharing their why. And I'm now going to give a little insight into my why and also my how. Some people, there's no right or wrong way, in my opinion, to do a podcast, to do an interview, a chat, a discussion, whatever you want to call it, to have two people, perhaps even more, getting together and talking about whatever it is that they're talking about. Some people, and I get this, like to do absolutely tons of research. Now, I research certain things, but I research those that I'm interviewing enough that when I ask the questions, I don't always know what the answers are. I don't like that feeling of knowing everything about somebody and then asking them. That's just my way, because otherwise it comes across as planned. And I know enough about an individual, but you will watch in the next couple of episodes, I guarantee you this, you will watch as realization heavily comes upon me. And I don't mean heavily as in a bad way. The penny drops, shall we say. And I don't mind that. I really, really genuinely don't mind that, because I love the reality, authenticity of what you're witnessing from me at times is me hearing for the first time what the individual has shared. Now, I can say that, again, openness, honesty. I've pre-recorded 2 episodes at time of recording already. So I know what's coming. And I wanted to share that because I wanted you to know that's the way I like to do it. So there are some quite deep things. There are some things that are mildly amusing. Tracey, her middle initials. It's quite amusing as you watch me discovering why and the significance of that. So here we go. That was it. I just wanted to explain that at the beginning because that's the way I like to do it. I know enough, but I don't like to go into reading out an entire biography on somebody and or doing that in advance. I've done a bit of research. I know enough to know, and then it just comes across as you will see. I can only speak on behalf of the next couple of podcast episodes, but you know what to do because there's tons coming. I'm really, really excited about the increase in what we're sharing together. amazing individuals, amazing, I am going to use the term interviews, amazing inspiration. So what's required from you? Comment, like, subscribe if you haven't already, invite others, because this is about life affirming messages. People who've come from incredible experiences, and that has now guided them, led them to what they share at this current time. Join with me in enjoying amazing messages from Tracey TLC Wilson. Comment, like, subscribe, and we're going to go into the interview right now. Tracey TLC Wilson, as you're known across all social media platforms and the work that you do. It's wonderful to be with you. How are you doing today?
I'm good, thank you. Really happy to be here. Thank you for having me on.
Excellent. Now, I've got a question to ask to begin with, because I can't help myself. If you don't want to answer it, of course you won't. But I'm really, really fascinated by the LC in the middle of Tracey and Wilson.
Yeah.
And I can't help myself, because it just fascinates me with the double barrel. So an L and a C in the middle of your name. Is that something you can answer?
So before I got married, my first name's Tracey Louise.
Right.
And my maiden name's Curran. So my mum wanted me to have that TLC initials.
Of course.
And when I got married, it was one of the things I was not dropping. So, but I didn't want a double barrel first name and a double barrel second name. So Tracey TLC Wilson, just keeping the TLC where mum wanted it. And it's quite fitting for what I kind of do now. So
amazing. Wow. Yeah. Now, within there, I'd not picked up on that, but now you've explained it, I think, of course, that makes perfect sense. So, TLC, I love that. That's brilliant. Yeah. And are you okay for me to use Tracey for the remainder of our discussion? Is that all right? Yeah.
I tend to go by Tracey. Yeah.
Cool. And we'll mention later, people can find you, everything you do. But I wanted to begin with what's really, really poignant, important, priority for you at this moment in time. So what's the current thing that you feel you almost can't help yourself but share with people now? You know, what's the thing that's really, really top of the list, if you like, at this moment?
I think for me, it's the whole how our emotional and psychological well-being affects us physically, our physical bodies, our physical condition. I think I've noticed it for a long time in life that there must be something more to illness and, you know, people's health conditions, in the way of that, you know, we're all same to an extent, but we all experience things differently. We might have the same health condition. Two people can have the same health condition, but one can suffer dramatically and another person, you know, it can be neither here nor there. I'm noticing it a lot just now because I'm doing a lot around the menopause, working more specifically with menopause just now. So I'm starting to see similarities and just different things that are making me question what might be making things worse for people.
Yeah.
In the past, I've been more to do with like weight management and just general well-being. You know, why people maybe struggle to build healthy habits into their life, keep to a healthy diet, struggle to manage their weight. You know, they feel that they're doing all the right things, whether it is weight management or whether it's, you know, menopause or whatever their health condition is. They're trying their best with all the physical things like nutrition, they're exercising more, they're doing all the things the books tell you to do, but they're just not getting anywhere.
Interesting. So sorry to pause you there for a moment, Tracey, because I think it's an important message, a very, very important one, and I know you know that, which is why you do what you do. But why do you think there is a little bit, almost a compartmentalizing of things? Because listening to you, I know holistic is used as a perhaps an overused phrase at times, but the entire person, the entire person. So emotions is kind of what, as a layperson, I was taking what you were saying, have an effect on us physically.
Yeah.
Why is it, do you feel, and I'm making an assumption that this is what many people do, I know I've done this, where I tend to focus on, you know, a physical, an emotional, a psychological, a spiritual, as almost being separate things.
Yeah.
Why do you think it is that perhaps at times as human beings we do have a bit of a tendency to do that?
I think it's kind of been the way it's always been, hasn't? Well, it's the way I felt it's always been, like a generational thing that, you know, physical and emotional health are two separate things. You know, if you've got something wrong with your mind or your emotions, you go to a counsellor or psychologist. If you've got something physical, you go to a doctor. But to me, having come from a pharmacy background as well, so my background is in pharmacy for 23 years. So I've seen it from this side of, you know, people go to the doctor for this physical issue. And I've also been able to see that, yeah, the doctors are great and all the healthcare assistants, everybody's great at what they're doing.
Yeah.
But it's almost like if it doesn't fall into what they're looking for, you know, the tick boxes and what their training is, they don't seem to be able to link the fact that that person's physical issue, you know, ask the right questions around it to see that actually something that's happening within their lives at the moment, whether it's their diet, the stress, that thing might be linking into what the physical issue is. So even the doctors don't tend to ask those questions to get deeper. So the patient or the client, the people, they just go away thinking, well, I've been given a tablet to fix this physical issue. And if the doctor's not told me to look at my stress and my lifestyle, then can't be anything to do with that.
Got you.
It's very hard to explain.
Which in some ways, totally with you in that, which in some ways, I think, again, from what you're sharing, so you're saying, of course, there is a place for that at times, of course, and I would understand you sharing that with what exists, but not as the permanent only way of managing things. And ultimately, it's creating a repeated pattern, isn't it? Because then there's a dependency and a reliance on whatever that administered, prescribed thing is, as opposed to potentially making other changes in life, which could be causational in what the outcome is. Yeah, I know if I use myself as an example from an inexperienced position, but caring more about me physically and otherwise, I know if I drink too much alcohol, shall we say, then I know there's going to be byproduct effects of that.
Yeah.
So I made a choice then, therefore, to curb that more. Physical exercise, walking, to do more of that, and to remove patterns that were feeling like sense of reward to me as a physical being, what weren't actually helping me.
Yeah.
Could you shed a little bit more light on that possibly? And I think we're very, very close to entering into your previous experience of the why behind everything you do.
Yeah.
But again, perhaps those habits that at times we can all have. If you get me.
Yeah. I think a lot of habits as well with people, you don't realise a lot of habits are bad habits, and you don't realise that you're slipping out of them. And for years, even I started to, I mean, I know we'll go into a bit more about how I've ended up later on, but even somebody that's very into health and wellness and nutrition, and I know all the things, it just took me hitting a really hard period in my life where those things slowly started dropping out without me even realising. And then looking back, you realise that actually my health is declining because I've stopped doing all these little things that I used to do. Unconsciously, they just slowly worked their way out of my life. And I find that with a lot of people, even with patients that I work within healthcare, they'll say, you know, oh, I don't know why I'm putting on so much weight. I used to be so slim. but they don't look over their life and see actually they're not as active as they used to be. You know, when they lost their husband so many years ago, their mental health started going down, so they've stopped going to the gym as much. So we can fall into the habit of thinking that it's just to do with age and that these things have just, you know, been taken from us. But actually, when we actually sit down and look over what's been happening in our life, piece it all together, we can see that actually, through no fault of our own, we just kind of lost our way a little bit with all the things that we used to do quite naturally, or just what used to be quite effortless.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, for me, that's where I thought about this, and I did, and we'll dive into this again later. The title for the discussion with you is Opening the Code of Life. Opening. I did think I became very, very close, and I want to explain this to you, to using the term unlocking. But I didn't want to use the word unlocking because it made it sound like it's very, very difficult.
Yeah.
And it was almost like it was something that was locked away, basically. But listening to what you've just said, the patterns and the behaviours and the habits that are not good for us are very, very easy to fall into. Okay, but it is, of course, possible to get out of those, which is definitely something we're going to talk about later, because that's what you do and that's how you're helping people. So I want to go a little bit more now into personally, because you touched on your own personal journey, and again, as much as you're prepared to share, and I know you're very open and honest and facing vulnerability without shame.
A little bit too open and honest at times.
In some ways, I think, just personally, that's the way the world kind of gears us to not be. But I think it is important. You know, it's so important to share the truth of where we've come from and why we do what we do. And I want to go into that as much as you're prepared to share. One, with your practitioner background, in some ways, your background in health, but also your own personal health in the past. What were the things that happened in your life that have really, really pushed you on and motivated you to be the passionate person you are now?
Yeah, well, as I said, I've always been into health and well-being, diet, exercise, probably to quite extreme years ago. And probably for different reasons to what I do it now. It would have been all for, you know, to look good, to feel good, you know, for all those kind of things. But in 2020, directly before we went into lockdown, I had been suffering of loads of various symptoms, like we've been saying, they just crept on over the years. You know, you're just putting it down to, you know, wear and tear, getting older, but they were creeping on very heavily. And I'd got to a stage where it was my sister's 30th that was coming up, and my hair was falling out in clumps. So obviously that's quite a physical thing that's affecting my appearance, and that was probably the thing that made me, right, now I need to go to the doctors, because it was starting to be visible to other people. And when you sorry, Tracey, when you're saying clumps, to what kind of degree? What sort of... if I was washing my hair, I could literally create a wig out of what was coming out. You know, you always get a bit of hair loss, but it was falling out clumps. When I would have my hair up like this, you would be able to see it round the front, that it had receded more, that, you know, there was little patches, not necessarily big, like alopecia type patches, nothing like that, but just going a lot thinner around the front. And because I've always been someone, I've always had a lot of hair, and it's always been the thing that I've kind of been like known for. It was quite hard to kind of deal with. But that was probably not one of the most severe things that was happening, because I had high heart rate. You know, my heart rate would be going up to like 130, 140 while I was sleeping. You know, it was registering on my Fitbit. I felt so tired all day, every day, which with my heart rate being the way it was, it's no wonder. I was waking up in the morning with my hair drenched in sweat. You know, not just a little flush. I looked like I'd slept in the shower.
Wow.
I was very... I felt like I had an inner rage all the time. And I'm not an angry person. I'm not a rage person. But I felt all the time that that there was always something that I felt like I was having to fight or making me angry or feeling this uncomfortable feeling inside.
Wow.
My whole character was changing. I felt low mood. My skin was going itchy. At the
time, were there things that you were considering that it was at the time, if you get me? Because that must have been scary.
Yeah, I was putting down just over time, just stress, because I'd lost a few people in 2016 to 2017. I'd lost 3 of the main women in my life, like my gran, mum, somebody that was like an aunt. So over time, I was just thinking, you know, it's grief. It's just, you know, my mood's up and down, and it was just kind of dwindling. I just thought it was just getting worse and worse and worse.
Got you.
And just obviously working in the NHS, you know, it was quite stressful. It was busy. I just thought it was a lot of things getting on top of me, really. Yeah. I was also getting muscle pain, joint pain, stiff. Somebody that used to run 10Ks, to be really, really active, I was struggling to walk up my own house stairs and hang the washing up. I was so out of breath. I felt like the whole body was just giving up on me. So at that stage, when my hair was falling out, I just thought, right, I need to go to the doctor and get this sorted. I just need a tablet or some medication that's going to sort all of this out. I also had in my head, I think for a while I was avoiding going. I'd convinced myself, and this may sound completely irrational, but at the time it was definitely very, very relevant, and I genuinely believed this. I thought I was I had Parkinson's, or onset of dementia.
Wow.
The hand tremor that I had, like people were asking, you know, what's wrong with you? What's wrong? Like I couldn't, like I was like this. I really like shaking, even when I was just sitting relaxing with my husband. You know, not just in like places that I might be anxious. My brain fog wasn't just brain fog. It was like I remember going into the kitchen and just standing, feeling like lost. It had got to such extreme levels.
And then going into lockdown.
Yeah, and to be honest,
wow. Okay.
To be honest, I actually, and it might sound bonkers, was so thankful for lockdown. Yeah. Because I really didn't want to be around people. And for about 2 years I went through, you know, on the medication, things got better. But I didn't want to be around people. My anxiety was so bad, and I actually felt that lockdown was an absolute blessing.
And I'm so grateful for your honesty, because I have had discussions around this with other people, and I think kind of the room/planet is split on it, because some people it was, of course, a heavily traumatic time. For other people it worked out as a benefit in some way.
And I was working in the NHS, so I was still working all the time, but on a social level it meant I didn't need to go to social events and everything was online. So to me, I was like actually enjoyed it, because people like yourself and other musicians that I knew were all of a sudden doing all the things that I love, because I've always went to Irish country music shows, concerts. I love my music. So all of a sudden people like yourself are doing things online, so I didn't need to I could still enjoy all of this, and you know, from my own house. So everything worked out great for me from that level. But when I went to the doctors, I walked in and I basically just burst out crying. I thought, where do I start? I don't know where to start with what's wrong. And he just said, we're going to order some blood tests. I think it might be might be like early menopause, but we'll just, you know, get a better view of what's going on. And they called me back I think was it that night or the next morning, really instantly, because I got such a fright that it was so quick that they said, we want you to come back down. And my husband was really frightened as well, because it was, you know, like, you need to come down now. So all sorts was going through my head. But I got down there, and when I got into the doctor's office, they said hyperthyroidism caused by Graves' disease.
You'll have to tell me if
What
nobody
Graves'
else. If nobody else, and I think possibly I would suggest maybe, hopefully, several other people. Tell us
Yeah,
a bit about those names
yes.
that you've just given, conditions that you've
So
just said.
a lot of people will have heard about hyperthyroidism when it's overactive. So some people
Got you.
they'll get that the sweating,
Yeah, yeah.
the racing heart. They'll lose a lot of weight initially. They'll lose a lot of weight. But mine was caused by an autoimmune disorder, Graves' disease,
Right.
which attacks the thyroid and causes those symptoms. So they'd found those antibodies in my system, which was causing that. And what they said was, you'll have probably had these antibodies all your life. And we just need to try and manage it. It's not going to go, it won't go away. You'll have this for life, basically. So
Nice.
they didn't give much they didn't give much advice on what I could do personally or what might have brought this on. It was just, here's some tablets, and you'll be followed up with a endocrinologist every so many months to keep an eye on it.
So without you feeling that you kind of have to bring out a box of any pharmaceutical drugs that you're taking now, without going into kind of that side of things, are you on much medication?
Nothing.
Nothing.
No medication at all now. Yeah.
So I know we're going to journey into that in a moment, but I just felt I couldn't help myself but ask that, because I thought that might be the case, but I didn't want to assume. And I think other people would be thinking, I mean, it's not that long ago, 2020, that's 5 years ago.
Yeah.
Time moves quickly, and at that time, listening to you without even being qualified to speak, I'm hearing as a human being a heck of a lot of conditions in you that were incredibly serious, life-changing, debilitating, to say the least. Yeah. And now, as I'm looking at you, as I'm sure our audience is, for want of a better expression, you look a beacon of good health. And I know sometimes when we look well, it doesn't always mean we are, but how are you feeling now?
Yeah, I'm doing really well now. I'm probably better now than I was even before I had all those issues. Because I've also had asthma since I was 7 years old.
Right.
And since I've started doing what I've been doing to get on top of all these issues, I'm no longer using inhalers really either, and I was using them pretty regularly.
So, of course, it would be wrong. It would be wrong of me not to use some of the time that we've got, more of the time that we've got, which is not me moving you quickly on through your experience, but I think it's very important now to share what changed. So for you personally, what changed, and what are some of the things that have helped you and that you're using to help others?
So I had struggled for about 2 years on medication, 18 months, over 18 months with medication. With this particular medication I was on, you're only supposed to take it for up to 18 months and then you've got to come off it. Yeah. They were struggling to get me level. So I was on it for a good couple of years. Eventually they took me off it, but within a few months I relapsed. I'd been doing all the things, I'd changed my diet to make it better for my thyroid health. I'd really looked into loads of the normal things to try and do what I could do. Started living, being more relaxed, trying to do meditation, different things, but I was still not quite being able to stay within those levels that they were looking for. When I relapsed, it was just after my dad had passed away. So I'd been taken off the medication in October. My dad had got suddenly diagnosed with cancer in the December, and he passed away in the January. It was all very quick, very stressful. And I just thought, is all this to do with stress, grief, and how I'm coping with these things?
Yeah.
And I asked the consultant, and they said, oh, well, do you smoke? And I said, no, I try to do everything by the book. I'm, pretty on the ball with everything. And they said, well, smokers tend to relapse more. And that was all they wanted to say. And I just said, well, and they said, but because you've relapsed so quick, we may need to look into our next options, like removing the thyroid. And I just thought, I really want to avoid that if I can. I said, could it be down to stress? I said, because I have just lost my dad, so I don't feel like I've had a fair trial at being off this medication to see whether I can, stay steady. So he allowed me to stay on the medication while I worked through grief and whatever else to manage that. And this is how I came across what I'm doing now. I came across a modality which is now science-backed, called belief coding. And it's all around working with the subconscious and trapped emotions, and how they can be affecting the body physically, our physical lives, our physical conditions. And I just thought, I'll try anything. At that stage, if you had told me you'll come on once a day and we'll sing Humpty Dumpty together and it'll work, I would have done that as well. I would have tried anything.
I love that as an analogy, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's brilliant.
I just think there's so many people that just won't try it because they don't understand it. But when you're at that desperate stage, to me, you just try anything. If you want to get better, you'll just do anything. Especially if there's no major impact that's going to act negatively. It's not like medication where you might get a side effect,
a byproduct outcome.
I'd started, I think it was about 6 months after my dad had passed. I'd found belief coding. As soon as I joined it, somebody that was an accredited facilitator was doing a case study on Graves' disease and thyroid to see how it would work, and I thought, well, this is aligned.
Wow.
So I, paid my money, and I thought, right, I'm giving that a try. And we done one session, and that session led me back to trapped emotions of not feeling heard. Now that might seem funny because I can talk.
Me too.
But that was it. Not being heard, being misunderstood. And it took me back to memories of 3 periods of grief, ranging back to age 27 when I lost a close friend. Then the periods where I lost my mum and my gran, and then on to my dad. And we just worked on a few memories, not talking about them, just purely talking about, because obviously there's a lot of emotions that come up around grief. It's not just about the loss. There's anger comes up, resentment of why that person got ill. There's so many different things come up.
Guilt, I guess guilt as well. Guilt.
So what belief coding does was it helped me identify what emotion it was I had to work on. So I didn't need to talk about the whole grief and loss. I just identified this feeling of not being heard, misunderstood. We done the techniques that you do within it to find what emotions were connected, what memories were connected to those emotions. Done a little bit of work around them. Done the process. It was my very first time doing it, having a session. I wasn't sure, I'll give it a go. We'll see what happens. Within about 6 months, I came off the medication and I've stayed off it.
Wow.
Previously, they'd kept me on it 18 months with no luck. And this time I came off it. And I also noticed, I was actually over at some training with my Aunt Helen, who I know that you...
Yeah, we've got previous interview episode on the YouTube
I better give her a name drop.
No, well done.
I got one on hers.
Excellent.
We were at a training together because she wanted to learn more about this too.
Yeah.
And my chest started to get tight. It was very warm with hay fever, and I just thought, I need my inhaler. And my inhaler was empty. And I went on to my NHS app and realised I hadn't ordered an inhaler since a month before the belief coding session. Now, one of the new beliefs and one of the things we worked on because of the thyroid issues was the breathlessness.
Yeah.
So we did do a little bit of work around breathlessness, but nothing to do with asthma. I wasn't looking to cure asthma because I've had it all my life. It's almost become just part of me. But I realised I hadn't ordered it, and so I hadn't been using it.
All right. Wow.
Yeah.
So do you feel within that, because I often share this with individuals. I've got a feeling we'll be sharing a discussion again in the future. I can't believe how time has passed in discussion with you. I feel we're at the outskirts of the beginning of what you share now, which you've touched on just then. And what I'm hearing, if I can share it on behalf of those that are potentially here with us, those that are listening, is getting a little bit more to what the cause of the symptom is. Sometimes in my limited experience, there's a tendency within healing, talking about emotion, where you almost have to go into absolutely everything.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that for a lot of people is really, really scary.
Yeah.
Now, if I speak on behalf of me, which obviously I can do, if I've got to visit every single traumatic experience I've had in my life, you know, that I think for most human beings is probably going to be quite a lot of stuff.
That's why they think it's impossible. That's why they just think, well, there's no, I can't go over all this, so there's no point trying.
But it sounds like you go into what the point is, and go on. Sorry.
And very, very, it is incredible how it's done, because obviously I'm trained in coaching as well, which is more questions and questions. And there is a little bit about that, before it, getting to that.
Yeah.
But it's those specific questions. And we also use kinesiology, so like the muscle testing. So what you think might be the cause. I've worked with people that think, it's because of the abuse that I had when I was at whatever age, and they automatically go to the most traumatic thing. But when we test it, it's actually what we need to work on is nothing to do with the most traumatic thing that they think. And it can go back to something really, like, not ridiculous, but something like being in the classroom, the teacher making them feel, humiliated, or it could go back to something that might have been quite stressful at the time but isn't even relevant in their life now.
Hidden almost in the body members, in the remembering of the physicality.
And so, even if we do have to go back to a traumatic experience, we don't go back to the trauma. We go back to slightly a bit of time after that, because they've already survived it, and just go into how they felt and why they're struggling to move forward from it, but on a subconscious level.
I love that. And that without knowing, that feels to me why I chose the word opening.
Yeah.
Because there is a form of releasing, and I think that's accessible, welcoming. I'm feeling that myself. I think probably quite a lot of people listening now will not attach so much fear to that thought.
It's a very it can be very cathartic.
Yeah. So that's lovely. So I think we will be together again, because I feel there's more to share on that for definite. I'd like now to, just in the last couple of minutes that we've got, for you to share how people can find out more, because I think that's a real open door opportunity. To create better lives for others, which is why you're motivated to do what you do. And so I think how people can find, how people can access, and maybe perhaps a parting message as well, if you can, a positive, assuring thought for others, please.
So I can be found across all social media as Tracey LC Wilson, obviously, and I've got a website inspired by tlcwilson.com. I think my message is just, if you think there's nothing that you can do for yourself, and you've been told, there's no other options, and this is just how life is going to be, as much as I'm never saying ignore that advice, medical help, I'm always, listen to your doctor. But just trust that there might be just something within you that you can do to change, that might change what's happening, and might be able to help the doctor see that there might be other things that you might need help with. There might be other areas of your life you might need help with, or you might just be able to unravel something yourself and it just miraculously improves.
That's amazing. I think a couple of key words: unravel. I think when you said within, and if we think of that, that's not alternative, is it?
No.
That's me saying it. That's not alternative, because that is us. That's within us. That's a strong thing that you're sharing there, and that unraveling.
It's not me that's doing anything. I'm helping bring it out of you, and you have that discovery yourself, and it's just like little light bulb moments, and you'll just start to make changes yourself. So yeah.
Tracey, thank you so much. I understand the TLC even more now. All of the links, I know you'll share them with me. They will be in the description for others to find you. And I'm very grateful for you sharing your experience. And it's often the case, isn't it? Your experience has become very much deep-centered into the reason why. You're a belief coding practitioner, is that a correct term?
Belief coding practice, yeah.
So everybody head to the links in the comments, reach out, and in the description. And Tracey, thank you so much. It's been amazing.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for having me.
No problem.